Okay. I'm here with Jacob Krzysiak he's a master's student at LaGrange College, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can you explain to me a bit more what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I graduated from LaGrange College with a Bachelor's of Arts in English in 2018. During my undergrad career, I kind of actually fell in love with LaGrange because I'm originally not from the area whatsoever. But through my undergraduate career, LaGrange College actually has a Servant Scholar program which helps practice or teach servant leadership, and through that you kind of do a lot of internships and partnerships with some of the nonprofits in the local area. I fell in love with the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper. I fell in love with DASH. I really love what Circles of Troup County stands for. So when I ended up getting my BA in English, I was approached and they offered me a chance to get my master's in philanthropy and development, which I'm hoping to mix the two. And essentially, I just want to work in the nonprofit world and kind of benefit those who really need kind of a leg up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite the noble endeavor, I guess. Noble aspirations.
I wouldn't really say it's a noble aspiration. I don't know. I've always kind of felt like I've come from a fortunate background.
Okay.
And honestly, until I came to college, I wasn't interested in volunteering at all. Didn't really donate or kind of spend that time. And I don't know. It's just once you're actually in an area where you're able to see poverty and see people who need help, I kind of just think it's human nature to want to be able to stick it out and be able to help benefit people when you have an opportunity to do so.
Now, being frank, you noticed a shift. I noticed a shift between your BA and your MA. Mm-hmm. Did that happen while you were in LaGrange? Did you notice the poverty while you were in LaGrange?
Well, actually, LaGrange, your freshman year, you start with it's kind of a freshman course. Every freshman student has to take it, and it's just called Cornerstone, where you learn the pillars of the college, and one of the pillars is being service. And I remember taking it with one of the religious professors. His name was Alvin Lingenfelter. And I just remember one statistic he randomly threw out. I can't remember the exact placement, but this was back in the fall of 2014.
Okay.
But Troup County actually ranked in the top 10 nationally for massive wealth inequality. Mm-hmm. So, you do have kind of wealthy families who do live in the area.
Yeah, you got the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah, but then, I hate the word ghetto, but LaGrange, or the other side of the tracks, LaGrange does have those types of communities. And I think it's a little ridiculous how, some people on that, some people kind of view those communities as, they're scary individuals or they're worthless or something like that, when they're human, just like us. They have stories just like us. They have their own walk of life. And honestly, since I've kind of volunteered and put myself in those communities, like I actually used to go live over in the Hillside community for the past 2 years, and interacting with these people and living amongst them, like they're just people just like us, and the fact that they kind of get that unfair judgment is a little concerning to me, because I feel like everyone kind of has their biases when they are unfamiliar with something, but I think every time I've been able to invite someone to volunteer or come to a community event, it's so eye-opening to be like, or to see them say, I would never expect that there'd be an art festival in Hillside or something like that. And it's super cool to see them get interested in wanting to actually know those communities, and then seeing them frequently visit and want to volunteer or even just hang out with some of the people in the area. So,
got it. I'm trying to figure out how to transition to you asking questions of me. Let's just do it.
Yeah,
I can splice it.
Well, I know when I first listened to your podcast, one of the main things you kind of mentioned in the first episode when you were doing a background of yourself was you used to be an educator. I'm pretty sure you still teach people every single day now that you have kids. But I'd just be very interested to know what got you into wanting to actually be a high school teacher.
Gotcha. Actually, I didn't want to be a high school teacher at first. I fell into it. What I originally wanted to do was I wanted to teach religious studies. Now that's an interesting story. I started by teaching Sunday school. I found out that I really loved teaching. I had a knack for it too. I had a natural gift for teaching. Like, kids just seemed to pay attention. They stopped what they were doing. I had a natural knack for it. I was very charismatic when I taught. I had a knack for it. And therefore, everyone around me seemed to notice my gift for teaching, and they all confirmed it. And therefore, I then followed it up with starting a small ministry, if you would, where I was the head teacher. And I did that. I did that for a little while. And then I decided to pursue it and go on for seminary training. So I could then go on to get my doctorate and then go on to get a PhD in religious studies. So that's kind of the trajectory I was shooting for. What happened at the midway through was I realized, I went, dear God, I'm in a lot of debt. And I kind of took an inventory and decided that I needed a plan where I could make the best of it. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed was where I had the most interest was in the history of religion. And therefore the history of Christianity is pretty much the history of Western Europe. The history of Western Europe it's kind of the history of the world in the eyes of history books.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily anymore, and nor should it be. But if we're talking about history books as they're written in the 20th century, it's kind of, yeah. Now, granted, as a little asterisk, they shouldn't be. It should be more inclusive. But yeah. So that's when I decided to enroll myself in a program down at Columbus State University, in a history education program, and luckily I was able to not only get free education down there by being a graduate assistant, but I was able to work in an environment where I was able to accept a role, pretty much where I was able to take the responsibility for an entire book and writing, as well as following it through for publication, mm-hmm. where I accepted the research of a scholar and I revamped it, I rewrote it, I edited it, and then I added on to it. I added extra chapters. It was the Ivy Foundation. Mm-hmm. It was the Ivy something. I forget now, it's so many years ago. But that allowed me to pursue my education for free, which got me through with no debt, which I loved, very much loved. And then I graduated with a job in hand. So I started to work at St. Anne Pacelli Catholic School. Not because it's Christian, it's just because it was an open invitation, because the guy who was teaching there, he needed to step down, and I already shared an office with him. So it kind of he handed me the job. Connections. While I was there, the kids they didn't like me at first because I was a hard ass. They were used to running the school, mm-hmm. specifically this class, like this class of juniors. They were used to running the school, and I didn't let them do that. But either way, they didn't do it in my class. But I did it in such a way that I expressed love for them. What was the question? What was the original question again?
Just kind of, what influenced you to want to be a teacher? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'll wrap that story up. Either way, the first time teaching was very different than the second time. The first time teaching, I was good at it. I was damn good at it. The second time teaching, it was a square peg in a round hole. The second time teaching, I got the job because of my performance in the first time. The first time, I had to leave because of seizures that started happening uncontrollably and intractably. We couldn't stop them. And we didn't know what was causing them. I went with seizures for 6 months. With seizures for 6 months. We didn't know what was causing them. And it turned out to be a brain tumor, which, dear goodness. But by that time, I had resigned from my job because I couldn't drive anymore, and it's an hour away.
Yeah.
But I got the job the second time based on my performance the first time. but I wasn't the same person coming back the second time. And they tried to work with me. They really did. But it wasn't the same thing. Like I wasn't as charismatic. I couldn't work off the cuff the same way I did. Dear goodness, I couldn't even talk the second time. Like, I had to warn the students, like, you're gonna notice I'll freeze sometimes, because I would freeze in the middle of a sentence and have to take like a minute-long pause to get the words out. And I didn't tell the administration about this because I wanted a job.
Yeah.
But the kids were great. The kids were very gracious, and they worked with me, and they were very understanding. But yeah, had the administration known about that, I don't think I would have gotten the job. But I lied. It is what it is. So,
kind of going off that, and you just had all that charisma the first time you were teaching, and how the students kind of ran a little wild, but got a little under control. Do you kind of have your personal favorite or special moment with a student? Because I can only imagine if students are kind of acting out and you have that relationship with them, you end up getting that connection where you're able to really influence their lives.
Yes. Yes. Okay, there was one student in particular who thought he was going to do whatever he wanted, and I told him to come see me after school. He reluctantly came in. He sauntered in after school. I told him to shut the door behind him. I pulled over to the seats. I pulled them side by side, and I told him to have a seat. I took the lanyard off. I set it on the table. I said, "Do you know what that means? It means I'm not a teacher anymore. You're too smart to get away with this bullshit." And he just smirked at me. I'm like, "Do you know what that means?" He said, "Yes." And from that moment on, we had instant connection. Like, he loved me from that point forward. It was nothing beyond just cussing at a student, but he loved me from that point forward because he knew that I wasn't going to accept anything less than his best effort. And I wasn't going to accept anything less than his best effort. And he knew that if he needed to, he could be real with me. Yeah. That student, I still stay in touch with that student. But yeah, that's my favorite story.
And how does that affect you personally, knowing that you have that relationship with someone where, you've been able to be an impact in their life, and you're still making an impact, I'm assuming, if you're still in connection with them?
It makes me feel happy, and it hurts at the same time. I'm happy because I know I'm having a lasting impact. And in fact, I taught his younger brother this past year on my second go round. And I had pretty much the same connection because his younger brother heard the stories of me and his older brother. But at the same time, I'm disappointed, and there's a certain part of me that grieves because I'm not having that impact anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
I wish I could, but I'm not that same person. And as much as I want to be, as much as I want to force myself to be, as much as I want to make myself be, there's nothing I can do to round the edges on that square peg.
Yeah. Have you come to terms with that?
Through much therapy, yes. But through much therapy, yes. But through much therapy, yes. But it's been a very hard fight. It was a 1.5 year battle while I was trying to teach and failing miserably at it. And it was pretty much a 6-month battle after I was done teaching, where I just came to terms with not being a teacher anymore. And like, who was I going to be if I wasn't a teacher? Like, what was my identity going to be? And that's where Hey LaGrange kind of comes from. It's me coming to terms with who I am and what I am, and my relation to the community, my relation to LaGrange, my relation to people, my relation to the community.
I mean, obviously, if you're a teacher, you are part of the community, but before Hey LaGrange was a thing, did you ever see yourself as kind of a community leader, or I guess being known as that LaGrange townie?
Oh, hell no. No, LaGrange was always just something that LaGrange was just a stop off.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a temporary stop. Like, I'm always trying to get my wife, I'm still trying to get my wife to move constantly. She constantly has to remind me, like, you've settled down. Like, this is our home now. I'm always trying to get moved, like Hawaii. I'm sending her links to like houses in Hawaii. Yeah. I have this fantasy of moving to San Francisco every now and then. It's wild, but yeah. But I think I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
I think we're interviewing each other. Humans of LaGrange, then for Hey LaGrange. So, well, I guess coming from that, I mean, especially after, I can only imagine how difficult that had to be as far as an experience. But going from teaching to wanting to be a storyteller, have you always been interested in stories, or has this kind of just been a discovered passion?
I'm not a storyteller. I'm a blank canvas. I just ask questions. I ask questions off a written page. I'm a blank canvas. People just paint onto me what they want to see, and I'm okay with that. Because to some extent, I allow people to tell their stories. And if I'm a storyteller, that doesn't mean that makes me too big of an item. Makes me too big of a artifact, or makes me too big. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I don't want to be a storyteller. I want to allow other people to tell their stories.
And what has kind of been the passion, or what was the discovery of knowing that this is something you've wanted to start now? Because that's a very unique way of putting it. Because I definitely would say Hey LaGrange is, although you are interviewing people telling a story, you're part of that process. So in my eyes, I would consider you a storyteller. Yeah,
I guess you could spin it that way. Because at the end of the day, I've chosen what to include, what not to include. I've guided the conversations in certain directions and away from certain other things. So I've chosen what to include, what not to include. But get back to me in a week. It's too complex.
Yeah.
I need time to think about it.
Definitely.
Do you have any follow-ups?
I'm going to kind of spin on the student experience. Would you say that when you were a kid going through school, any age level, do you think you've ever had that experience to where you were the one being impacted by that certain educator? I guess the simpler way to put it is, do you have that favorite teacher, and why, and what happened?
I was a hellion through and through. I was a very troubled kid going through school. I was very bright, but I was very troubled. But because of that, there was two teachers who really saw the diamond in the rough. It was my English teacher, not my English teacher, my German teacher, and my econ teacher. My German teacher he would engage me any way he could. He just sought to engage me any way he could. Like, he would completely disregard the fact that I wasn't doing the lesson and sit and talk to me about comic books. Because I was reading comic books anyway in the class. I was disregarding the lesson, so he would disregard the lesson too, and just sit and talk comic books with me. And that made the biggest impact on me, because the teacher cared. The same with my econ teacher. My econ teacher, he redid my entire schedule because I was late for school every day and I wasn't going to graduate. So my econ teacher redid my entire schedule. So I had like a free period, first and second period, which technically you're not allowed to do. But he did it. And he did it with the guidance counselor's permission, because there was a known fact that I was a troubled kid in the school. And yeah. And I probably should include my wrestling coach in there too, Mr. Eric Darcy. But he was a good guy no matter what. But anyway.
So So, Humans of LaGrange has about an audience of, across all platforms, about 3,000 people.
Wow.
And one thing we always want to make sure to ask is, with that platform, where most of the people who obviously follow the page are in the area of Troup County, so kind of putting yourself on pedestal or giving you a giant microphone, what is something that you would want to tell LaGrange? It can be personal life advice, or it can pretty much, it's just an open-ended question. Because I definitely feel like you've been through enough experiences to kind of...
Yeah. How do you boil down the entire existence of human beings into one little mantra? I'm gonna cut this out, by the way. Not your question. But
No, you're fine.
My rambling. Don't take life so seriously. To be fair, like, I've almost lost my life more times than I can count. Yeah, both as a teenager, as an adult. Like, the brain tumor was just one thing in a long line of incidents where I could have lost my life, or I almost did. And at the end of the day, the lesson I learned was just don't take it so seriously. It can be over at any minute. So, just laugh it off. Obviously, you can't laugh everything off, but laugh it off.
Definitely. Because you kind of mentioned it earlier on where you said you and your wife thought you weren't going to have any kids.
Yes.
So, now, how many do you have? Just one? Or two?
We have 2.
How has that perspective of, I'm not going to have kids, to, especially after going through your experience, which I know you said you don't want to talk about, kind of, because it's your story to tell.
Sure.
But how has that kind of changed your perspective, or just your life in general? I feel like there are definitely views that change when having children.
Oh, goodness gracious. That's a good question. In some ways, it's changed infinitely. In other ways, it's not changed at all. You look at everything different when you have kids, after you've had kids. I realize that's a cliche, but it's really true. But at the same time, I can't speak for everybody, but I constantly have to remind myself before I make decisions that I have children. Because
I love it.
Because, like, I'm gonna... Because I'm very impetuous, and I like to make rash decisions, or I like to make decisions on impulse. I'm very impulsive, and that doesn't work well with kids. You need to think things through, and yeah, I have to remind myself I have kids. I'm getting better. Alistair is now 4 and Auden is 2. And 4 years into it, I'm getting much better than I used to be. But, yeah. If this wasn't recorded, I could tell you stories, but I'm not gonna. Off record.
Definitely. And again, if this is, because I don't know how comfortable you are with questions, I guess, relating to your experiences when you did have cancer.
Ask her. If it's too much, I'll shoot it down.
I know you mentioned earlier, kind of when you found out that you did have that tumor, it was kind of when you found out also that you're going to be a dad.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. I found out earlier. We heard the heartbeat for the first time.
Okay.
Because I found out I had the cancer right before we heard the heartbeat. So the shock of the day was the cancer. We knew we were going to have the heartbeat. We knew that we were hearing the heartbeat. That was the big celebratory event of the day. And the cancer was just the shock and the horror of the day, because we just thought I was going to the neurologist for the checklist, for neurologist for the results of my MRI.
Yeah.
And I had MRIs all the time. Like, But anyway, you're asking a question.
But it's going to kind of be a two-parter based on that. But I guess, could you possibly describe how you were feeling? I mean, the day you hear a heartbeat of your child and kind of getting those results. It's like, how do you balance a celebration with that kind of news as well?
Yeah, so we're just gonna skip that one.
Okay. So kind of going on to the second part of that is, if you could kind of give advice or kind of talk about ways to together get through that experience. Like, say there's another family that has an ill parent or even an ill child. What do you think would be some ways or words of advice as far as helping families get through that process?
I feel like I'm just now getting through 5 years later. So it's really, I don't think it's something you can get through necessarily. It's something you can survive in waves, but the impact doesn't ever really go away. Yeah, the impact doesn't ever really go away. Now, maybe maybe every family is different, but for my family, the ripples have gone on for over 5 years. The ripples have gone on for over 5 years of the impact of that one drop, that one surgery that took 2 hours. They took the chunk out of my brain, which, yeah, that one surgery took 5 years for my family to recover from, and it's still not recovering. I just feel like we're getting there now. So I don't really have any advice to offer. The trite answer is faith. The cliche answer is faith. The cliche answer is God. And I think those things are important for spiritual people. I think the spiritual answer is good. And if you're a spiritual person, cling to those things dearly. But yeah, I don't have the answer. I took a long time to get there, but I just don't have the answer.
Well, you said it's taken 5 years to get to that point where you are now. Mm-hmm. To you personally, how relieving is that feeling, if it's relieving at all?
It's not relieving at all, because at the same time, I'm frustrated that it took 5 years to get here, and I kind of wish that I'd gotten there in a year. Like, I kind of want to beat up on myself for taking this long to get here. So at the same time, it's a bit of self-flagellation for taking as long as I did to get here. So it's bittersweet, if you're okay, like if you could. But there's a solace in knowing that I got here, and I'm still not there. I'm getting there.
Well, kind of just as a personal thing, I think it's awesome that you can kind of be honest about that, and I think it's also great that you don't just randomly pull random answers. The fact that you can be honest about that, I think, is actually a really good characteristic of your being. Not everyone has the answers. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it's taken 5 years and still just maybe a little bit longer, you're getting there, and just know you do have people behind you. Cool. That's great.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you feel like you're talking about change coming in waves although your kids are going through different stages of life, in your wife as well, I'm sure, and they're growing so fast, do you feel like them being a constant in your life is a source of encouragement in terms of knowing that they're always going to be there, and knowing that although they do change throughout the whole process of everyone's growth in your family, that's a constant, is your family in a sense?
Okay. That's a really complex issue. It's cold, so I'm going to give you the simple answer. Yes. I apologize, but it's cold.
Fine. You're fine.
Can we wrap it up?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. This has been Jacob Krzysiak with Humans of LaGrange. He's been interviewing me today, which was a surprise to me. I signed up for interviewing him, but all right. Have a good day, guys.